The night everything began did not announce itself with drama, but with silence that felt louder than any argument. And Laura noticed it the moment she stepped into the living room, where the lamp glowed softly and the clock ticked like it was, counting something she could not see, because Daniel was sitting there waiting. Not with anger or tension, but with a calm that made her uneasy. And as she set her bag down and met his eyes, she felt the quiet stretch between them like a held breath. The kind that comes before a truth is spoken, and Daniel spoke first, telling her he had been thinking for a long time about them, about how their life had become steady but flat, safe but numb. And Laura felt her chest tighten because she had been thinking the same things but never dared to say them out loud. And when he told her he did not want them to slowly disappear into routine, that he wanted her to feel alive again, the words landed heavier than she expected, not because they were cruel, but because they were honest in a way that stripped away comfort. And she tried to respond calmly, even as her fingers played with her wedding ring, a habit she did not realize had become a shield, and she asked what he meant, expecting reassurance or a joke to soften the moment. But Daniel did not back away, instead telling her that love should grow, not shrink, that he trusted her enough to want her to rediscover parts of herself she had buried under years of responsibility. And Laura felt both seen and frightened, because trust like that felt like standing at the edge of something deep. And memories rushed in of who she had been before marriage, before routines, before days measured by errands and shared calendars. And she wondered when she had stopped asking herself what she wanted. And as Daniel spoke about wanting honesty over comfort, she noticed his voice trembled just slightly, revealing that this idea had not come from confidence, but from fear of losing something precious. And the realization softened her resistance, because she could see he was not pushing her away, but inviting her closer in a way that felt unfamiliar. And yet when he said he wanted her to feel something new, something real, something that reminded her she was alive, Laura felt a sharp mix of curiosity and guilt, because wanting more did not mean wanting less of him. But it felt like a betrayal even to think it, and the room seemed smaller as the weight of choice pressed in, and she wondered if change always began this quietly, without rules or clear paths. And as Daniel reached for her hand, she felt the warmth and familiarity of it, grounding her even as her mind raced. And she realized how little they had truly talked about feelings in recent years, choosing peace over honesty. And now honesty stood between them like a door cracked open.
Okay.
And she could see light through it, but not what waited on the other side. And when he told her there were no expectations, no demands, only trust, Laura felt tears burn behind her eyes, because freedom sounded beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And she wanted to ask if he was afraid. But she already knew the answer, and instead she nodded slowly, not agreeing to anything specific, only acknowledging that something had shifted. And as the conversation ended without resolution, the tension did not disappear. It settled, and later that night, lying beside Daniel in the dark, listening to his steady breathing, Laura stared at the ceiling and felt the familiar comfort of their shared life wrapped around an unfamiliar sense of restlessness. And she realized that love did not always announce its struggles loudly. Sometimes it whispered them in moments like this, when two people were brave enough to admit that staying the same could be more dangerous than changing. And as sleep refused to come, Laura wondered if this quiet question her husband had placed in her hands would lead her closer to him or further away, and whether discovering something new inside herself would heal what time had worn down or reveal truths she was not yet ready to face. Laura did not plan the change, but it arrived anyway on a bright Saturday morning when she signed up for a local art workshop after passing the studio 3 times in 1 week. As if something unseen kept nudging her forward, And the moment she stepped inside, she felt different. Not dramatic or reckless, just lighter, because no one there knew her history or her marriage or the quiet conversation that had shifted her world. And as she took a seat among strangers holding brushes and notebooks, she felt awkward at first, then curious. And curiosity quickly turned into focus as the instructors spoke about expression and honesty, words that felt uncomfortably close to home. And that was when she noticed Michael sitting a few seats away. Not striking or flashy, but calm, observant, and present in a way that made people lean in without realizing why. And when their eyes met briefly and he smiled, it felt natural, not charged, just human. And as the session moved forward, they began talking in short exchanges about colors, ideas, and why they were there. And Laura surprised herself by answering honestly, saying she wanted to try something new without fully understanding why. And Michael nodded as if he understood more than she said, and that simple recognition stayed with her long after the workshop ended, because on the drive home she realized she had not checked the time once, had not rushed, had not felt pulled back by obligation, and instead felt a quiet excitement she could not name. And over the next few weeks, the workshop became her space, a place where she showed up as herself. Not as a wife or a caretaker or someone trying to keep balance. And Michael became a familiar presence. Someone she talked to icily, someone who listened carefully and spoke thoughtfully. And their conversations never crossed lines but brushed close to deeper places, sharing stories of missed chances, changing dreams, and the strange way life could feel full and empty at the same time. Ah? And Laura noticed how she laughed more freely. There, how her shoulders relaxed, how she felt seen without being judged. Ah, and it unsettled her because she did not feel guilty for enjoying it, which made her question what enjoyment meant. And at home, Daniel noticed the change. Not in obvious ways, but in how Laura moved, how she hummed while cooking, how her eyes carried a spark he had not seen in years. And when he asked casually about the workshop, she answered honestly, saying it felt good to learn again, to meet people. And Daniel smiled, though something thoughtful passed behind his eyes. And Laura felt a small twist in her chest because she did not want to hurt him. She did not want to lie. And as days passed, the line between inspiration and emotion blurred quietly, not through action, but through awareness. Through the realization that feeling awake did not always require touch or confession, only connection. And one afternoon, Michael shared a story about leaving a job that drained him because he feared becoming someone he did not recognize. And Laura felt the words settle deep inside her, echoing her own unspoken fears. And she realized then that what drew her to him was not attraction, in a simple sense, but reflection, the way he mirrored questions she had avoided. And that scared her more than anything else, because it meant the change Daniel had invited had already begun. And that night, as she lay in bed beside her husband, she replayed the 10 small moments of her day, the laughter, the focus, the ease. And she wondered whether discovering new parts of herself meant losing old ones, and whether growth always came with risk. And though nothing improper had happened, Laura understood that emotions did not need permission to grow. They only needed space. And she sensed that the door Daniel had opened was leading her somewhere unfamiliar, and while she did not yet know where it would end, she knew with certainty that she could no longer pretend she felt nothing, because something had started to move inside her, quietly but quickly. And once movement begins, stillness is no longer possible. The change Laura had tried to control now moved faster than she expected. Not through actions, but through thoughts that followed her everywhere. Because even when she focused on daily routines, her mind kept returning to moments that felt small, but heavy. like the way Michael listened without interrupting or how silence around him never felt empty. And she began to understand that emotions did not arrive loudly. They built quietly until they demanded attention. And this realization filled her with guilt because nothing improper had happened. Yet something meaningful had shifted inside her. And she found herself questioning why feeling understood could feel so powerful after years of comfort. And the workshop no longer felt like a hobby, but like a mirror reflecting parts of herself she had ignored. And one afternoon, during a break, Michael spoke about a relationship that ended not because of anger, but because both people stopped growing together. And his words struck her deeply because they echoed the fear she had never voiced. And she listened closely as he explained how staying silent had hurt more than leaving. And Laura felt a tightness in her chest because she recognized herself in that silence, and for the first time she wondered if honesty could hurt less than distance. And when she returned home that evening, Daniel noticed her quiet mood and asked gently if something was wrong. The concern in his voice broke through her defenses because she realized he was not blind to her changes. He was simply choosing patience, and that patience made her emotions heavier, not lighter. And later that night, she sat across from him at the kitchen table. It's the same place where they had shared years of simple conversations. And she finally admitted that she felt confused, that something inside her was waking up, and that she did not know how to explain it without sounding ungrateful. And Daniel listened closely, his expression calm but strained. And when she finished, the silence between them felt fragile, and he spoke slowly, admitting that when he encouraged her to find something new, he believed love was strong enough to handle it. But now he was learning that trust also required courage. And Laura felt tears rise because she understood then that both of them were risking something precious. And neither knew the outcome. And she admitted that she still loved him deeply. That her feelings had not replaced that love, but complicated it. And Daniel nodded, acknowledging that love was not a simple emotion, but a living thing that changed over time. And his honesty hurt because it left no room to hide. And in the days that followed, Laura pulled back slightly from the workshop, not out of fear of Michael, but out of respect for the truth she owed herself and her marriage. And when she saw Michael again, she felt the difference immediately. A distance that had not existed before, and though their conversation remained kind and thoughtful, Laura sensed that something unspoken now stood between them. And when Michael asked if she was okay, she answered honestly, saying she was figuring things out, and he accepted that without pressure, which made the moment harder because it confirmed that what she felt was not driven by temptation but by understanding. And as she drove home that day, Laura realized that emotions could be powerful even when they were never acted upon, and that acknowledging them was not betrayal but awareness. And that night she lay awake, listening to Daniel breathe beside her, feeling the comfort of years and the weight of choice. And she understood that growth did not always lead away from love. Sometimes it forced love to change shape. And the question that haunted her was no longer whether she felt something new, but whether she had the courage to decide what that feeling meant. Because whatever she chose next would define not just her marriage, but the person she was becoming. And as the night stretched on, Laura knew that pretending nothing had changed was no longer possible, and that facing the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way forward. Laura had spent weeks navigating the quiet turbulence inside her. Moments of joy from the workshop, laughter with Michael, and the lingering warmth of discovery. And now she realized that the path forward required clarity, not confusion, because feelings could teach her much, but actions had to reflect truth. And one evening, she sat in the living room with Daniel, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows, and spoke honestly about everything she had experienced, the excitement, the self-reflection, and the emotional awakening. And Daniel listened without interruption, his hand resting near hers on the couch, a calm presence that gave her courage to continue. And as she described the light she had found in herself, she noticed the subtle shift in him, a mix of relief and sadness, understanding that the journey had been mutual, that he too had faced the possibility of loss, and yet, in that shared vulnerability, they found connection because honesty opened a space neither expected. And Laura realized that discovering new parts of herself did not mean leaving the life they had built. It meant appreciating it more fully, embracing both comfort and growth at once. And she spoke of Michael not as temptation, but as a mirror. Someone who had shown her that she could still feel deeply. And Daniel nodded, saying that he had asked her to feel something new, not to create distance, but to rediscover passion, curiosity, and life itself. And Laura felt tears well up because she understood the depth of his love, the patience it had taken, and the courage it required to let her explore safely. And as the days passed, Laura intentionally stepped back from the workshop, focusing instead on applying her discoveries at home, noticing how colors in her kitchen, small acts of kindness, and thoughtful conversations with Daniel became richer, more alive, and she began sharing openly, laughing more freely, and savoring moments that once passed unnoticed. And Daniel responded with warmth, planning little surprises, remembering small details, and showing her that his attentiveness had never waned. And as they walked hand in hand through the autumn streets near their home, the leaves crunching underfoot, they spoke freely, shared dreams, and reflected on the changes in themselves and each other. And Laura realized that the growth she had feared would pull them apart had, in fact, drawn them closer, because love was not static. It was living, and it thrived on honesty, trust, and mutual discovery. And she felt a new kind of intimacy, one that went beyond physical closeness to something deeper, a shared understanding that could withstand challenges. And the realization hit her that what Daniel had truly wanted was not for her to turn elsewhere, but to wake fully to herself, to feel again the thrill of life. And she now understood that her journey had been about becoming whole while still cherishing what they had, and every glance, every touch, every quiet evening together carried renewed meaning, making routine magical, familiar yet fresh. And Laura felt her heart open in ways it hadn't in years, recognizing that love was strengthened by growth, not weakened. And when she reflected on the past weeks, it's the mixture of fear, excitement, confusion, and clarity. She understood that the lessons she learned, the courage to face emotions, the patience to observe them, and the choice to honor truth had reshaped her entirely. And Daniel, seeing her transformation, felt a renewed admiration and tenderness. And together, they crafted a rhythm that balanced their old comfort with new energy, laughter with reflection, and dreams with grounded life. And Laura realized that the something new Daniel had asked for had arrived, not as an escape or a distraction, but as an awakening within her own heart. And she knew that the bond between them had been tested, stretched, and ultimately strengthened, creating a love that was both familiar and revitalized, deep, tender, and resilient. And as she lay next to Daniel that night, listening to his steady breathing and feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, Laura understood fully that the journey had not been about choosing between people, but about choosing life, love, and authenticity. And in that choice, she had found herself, her marriage, and a future that felt alive with possibility. And she smiled softly, knowing that the quiet courage to feel, to reflect, and to embrace change had brought them both to a place where love was no longer routine, but a living, breathing promise that they would continue to grow together. side by side, heart by heart, and in that realization, she finally felt at peace, ready for whatever life would bring next.